right. Hello, everyone. Good, good. My name is Roger Milliner. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at MetroPlus Health Plan. I first would like to say thank you to everyone who came out today and bared this terrible weather that we're having. It's cold outside, but it's nice and warm in here. Can I get an amen on that? Amen, amen. All right. So before we get started today, I'd just like to briefly tell you a little bit about how we got here to this point. So who here is familiar with MetroPlus Health Plan? One, two. Who here has MetroPlus Health Plan as their insurance? Just one? All right, we got to change that. We got to get more MetroPlus people in here. All right, so a couple of years ago, myself and my team, we got together and we said, how can we make sure that MetroPlus is a health plan that people are aware of that is just not considered a plan that covers me for health insurance? How can we be known as a plan that deals with other things in the community, not just making sure that people have insurance so that they can pay for it when they go to their doctor, but to make sure that people saw us in a different light. So we decided to embark on a campaign of wellness. And we started out with a program that was originally called Metro Moves. So has anybody ever heard of Metro Moves before? One or two? So Metro Moves is a program that was meant to make sure that we look at everything, the person in their whole totality, making sure that people lived healthy lifestyles, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, financially, because in order to live a healthy lifestyle, all those things have to be working well together. And we decided to do a series of different events. So the first thing that we did was we had a fashion show. We were trying to attract the millennials and make sure that we got to younger people and make sure that they were aware of health insurance and the importance of living healthy, eating right, making sure your finances together. And we put on a big fashion show right with iHeart in another one of their studios, and it was a great success. That fashion show featured many up-and-coming fashion designers. We had a panelist of doctors, trainers, psychologists, a whole wealth of people that was able to talk to the audience about making sure that their spiritual was well and everything else. After that, we did a series of public workout sessions. So we teamed up with the Giants, we teamed up with the Jets, we teamed up with the Knicks, and we did a series of public workout sessions with professional athletes where people joined in and learned about fitness, how to eat right, etc. After that, we did a series of workshops for small businesses so that small businesses can learn how to get financial assistance for their business to grow their audience. And we kept doing these type of events. So this is another one of the type of events that we wanted to put on today, a mental health discussion. So we're transitioning the name from Metro Moves to Good For You. So this is a part of a Good For You series. And we teamed up with one of our media partners, iHeart, to make sure that the community knew exactly what we were doing. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce shortly our Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams. And he's going to come to the stage. So let me tell you a little bit about Eric Adams. So Eric Adams, he's the Brooklyn Borough President. For the past 3 decades, he has served the residents of the city as a police officer. So he was a former police officer, a state senator. In November 2013, he was elected to represent all of Brooklyn as the borough president. He was born in Brownsville and educated in the city's public school system. Eric is committed to ensuring the bright future of helping each and every Brooklynite reach his or her potential. Eric has been an effective advocate for Brooklyn, bringing people and communities together to create progressive change, and working with both private and public sectors to integrate the borough's economy and encompassing job growth and investment in every neighborhood. Whether it was his beat on the street when he was a police officer or in the halls of government, Eric has always looked out for Brooklyn's working families and sought to protect the most vulnerable residents. Eric has opened up Brooklyn Borough Hall in many ways that has never been open in the prior years. He's allowed thousands of people to connect for the first time with government and civic life. His agenda cannot be defined by his short list of issues. He is committed to addressing the wide range of concerns facing Brooklynites, working closely to address a broad range of issues affecting his constituents, from civil rights and public safety, transparency in government, and quality of life. He organized support against NYPD's controversial stop and frisk and led efforts on behalf of gun control. His work involved efforts to prevent racial profiling, gender discrimination, domestic violence, and elder abuse. He also proposed legislation to reform campaign financing, addressing inequities in sentencing dependent on people's crimes. In addition, he also improved quality of life through health care, affordable housing. He enjoys riding in the streets of Brooklyn on his bicycle, the borough president riding around on his bicycle in Brooklyn. Meditation and exploring new cultures and places. So before we bring up Eric Adams, I also want to say that I've had the great fortune to work closely with this man in many ways through MetroPlus Health Plan. And when we talk about opening up the halls of Brooklyn Borough Hall for people and organizations to come into, he really does mean that. MetroPlus has had several events with him, including events that we've done with the Guyanese Cultural Association during the Labor Day events. We worked with him in Brooklyn Borough Hall at the Dominican Independence Day, for Dominican Independence Day, and many other events. MetroPlus had several events at Brooklyn Borough Hall. And he might not want me to say this, but this man is going to be our next mayor in New York City, all right? So let's give it up for the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And really thank iHeart and MetroPlus for the things we do together. And this is such a powerful topic. How many of you heard the term man up before? Man up. Back in 1975, my brother and I were arrested, and the police who arrested us, for no reason at all, they decided to take us to the basement of the 103rd precinct, the same precinct where Sean Bell was killed. And they kicked us repeatedly in our groin over and over and over again until we went unconscious. My brother and I never talked about it until we were adults. When my brother left the precinct, it impacted him. I still believe today he is suffering from the trauma that happened then. I left with a different energy, and I manned up. I said, listen, it happens, handle it. Growing up in South Jamaica, Queens, things happen all the time. And, you know, you're traumatized. You go get yourself a Old English 800 back then. I don't know what you drink now. You know, you get some bamboo, roll a joint, and you know what? You man up. You handle it. And it wasn't until recently that I constantly heard of this term called PTSD. I thought and equated it to what happens on the battlefields. When people are in battle, you have PTSD. Let me let you know what PTSD is and why every time I saw a police car, every time I saw a police show, every time I heard a siren, I remembered that incident in the 103rd precinct. Physically, I looked fine and my body was functioning. I was going through the process, but the PTSD is real. When you experience trauma and you think about it, your body does not know the difference between if you are actually going through it or you're just thinking about it. You still go through the internal mechanism of fright and flight, and you release all sorts of chemicals that tells your body that you're about to get inside a fight, and you have to start fighting. So the blood leaves your major arteries and it goes to your muscles because we were hardwired to that, because back in the day we was running around fighting lions and tigers and bears. But now we are constantly in that state. So when I thought about being beat in the 103rd precinct, just thought about it, my body was going through the chemical reaction as though I was actually going through it during that time. Are you feeling me? So those of us who think about losing a loved one, who think about the trauma of everyday life, who walks inside their job and just feel like choking the shit out of their boss. Those of us who are constantly wired, you're constantly wired, and you look at yourself and you say to yourself, listen, I'm manning up. I look fine. my sneakers are right, my clothing are right, I'm tight. No, no. This mental health stuff is real, and particularly in the communities of color. You're not going to walk down the block and tell somebody, listen, I'm going to see my therapist. You're not going to, sit around at a party somewhere and say, you know what, the other day I sat down in a group session to talk about what I was feeling. No, you're going to man up. You're going to do the same thing that I did. You're going to say, you know what, had a bad day, I'm feeling terrible. Let me just go get this Henny and, just cool out. Or let me go find myself a shorty and just cool out. This is what this is about. Finally dealing with the issues and reversing them. Hooray to what the mayor is doing and the first lady is doing, that we turn this around and do this the right way. That is what we want to do. We want to be in your partner in the process. Let's keep doing what we have. Let's have iHeart. Let's have MetroPlus. Let's have our partnership. Thank you so much. Let's man up the right way.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Isn't he such a great speaker? I am so fortunate, and thank you, Mr. Adams. We appreciate all of your assistance. And again, he's done a lot. He continues to work with MetroPlus, iHeart, and also with the New York City Health and Hospital System. He's introduced something recently called Meatless Mondays. So a lot of times when you go to city hospitals, there's certain types of food that's being, presented to you. He really believes in not only, making sure that people have a great mental, but also physical as well. So he's introduced legislation into our hospital system called Meatless Mondays, and I know that we're about to start that. I see somebody from Health and Hospitals in the corporation in there saying yes. So you'll eat healthy whenever you go to one of the New York City public hospitals. All right, next, I'm going to introduce a doctor. Her name is Dr. Karinn Glover. She was born in the Bronx, attended various schools, including Howard University and Columbia. She's the director of adult behavioral health at a New York City hospital. She's also an assistant professor of psychology at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Although starting at companies like Essence Magazine and Verizon, her love and curiosity for medicine has led her to a charge to mental health. Dr. Glover, she will guide us through a mindfulness meditation moment. She is also a part of a mental health advisory group called Sisters Thrive, Brothers Thrive. This is a 5-minute experience, so let's please enjoy. Let's welcome Dr. Karinn Glover.
Nice to meet you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Has anybody ever meditated before? Okay, amen. Look at that, all right? So I'm seeing a lot of people who know how to find answers within themselves. So we're going to do what we call a 5-minute body scan. So this is an exercise that you can do by yourself. You can do it with a loved one. You can do it on the subway. You can do it before bed when you're trying to relax. You can do it before you feel like you're about to swing on somebody, if you feel like you're going to move in that direction. So this is something that's ancient. It's also very helpful for just kind of finding your calm. If you have a history, if you've ever had a trauma and you don't like to close your eyes, leave your eyes open. I'm not the meditation Nazi. Leave your eyes open, but find your calm. Put your feet on the ground, if you will. Place them at a comfortable distance from each other. Find a comfortable seat. And just begin to take a deep breath. We're just going to do this for 5 minutes. I'm going to set my alarm. All right, and you're going to tune into kind of what's happening with you, all right? So I recommend that you place one hand on your heart and another hand on your belly. Again, leave your eyes open if you want to. This is how you want to do it. And just start to take a deep breath in through your nose. And bring your focus in, and take a deep breath in, and bring your focus to your feet if you can. And you may just start to notice what your feet feel like. Maybe they're cold. Maybe they're wet. That's okay. Take another deep breath in through your nose. And when you let it out, see if you can let it out slowly. And on your next breath in, bring your attention to your ankles and your lower leg. How are they situated? Can you feel your boots against your leg, the skin? Can you feel your socks? Can you feel the fabric of your pants? On your next deep breath in, bring your attention to your thighs, what they feel like pressing against your chair. You may notice the sounds of this room, some of the machinery, some of the ventilation. That's fine. Bring your attention back to your body. On your next deep breath in, bring your attention to your butt. I said it. Feel the pressure of the seat of your body against the chair. And if you start to have thoughts about what the weather's like outside, what's going on Instagram, what's going on Twitter, that's okay. You just treat those like the perfume people at Macy's. You give them a nod and you keep on walking. And you come back to your body. Deep breath in. If you have one hand on your belly, just feel when you take a deep breath in, feel if your belly is expanding as you breathe in. Everybody's seen how babies breathe. Take that deep breath in and let your belly expand as you draw your breath way down. And then exhale, a deep exhale. Next, deep breath in. I still want you to focus on your abdomen. See if you feel any sounds, any vibrations coming from your abdomen. Some of you may feel like a little gas. That's fine too. We're all friends. On your next deep breath in, take a deep breath and see if you can count to 4 and hold it for 2, and then let it out for 4, 2, 3, 4. And as you bring your attention up, bring your attention to your chest. If you have one hand on your heart, just feel for your heartbeat. No matter what you do, your heart is always there, beating. Another deep breath in. Count to 4 as you breathe in. Hold it for 2. And then exhale for 4 counts. 2, 1. If you need to readjust yourself in your seat, go for it. Bring your attention to your back. What does your back and your shoulders look like? Are your shoulders up to your ears right now? Because if they are, see if you can let them go a little bit. On your next deep breath in, bring your attention to your neck and your throat, and then to your head. And then to take a moment, get ready to open your eyes if they were closed before. Take a deep breath. You just meditated. You just did a body scan. My name is Karinn Glover. I'm a psychiatrist at Montefiore Medical Group in the Bronx. I work with patients. I oversee medical services, psychiatric services within primary care throughout the Bronx and Lower Westchester. This is a mindfulness meditation, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. How'd that feel, everybody? Good? So Dr. Glover just put us in the perfect mindset to get this panel kicked off. Is everybody excited and ready for the great assembly of panelists that we have there today? Yeah? You guys are going to have to really give it up because they're going to be ready to come out here shortly, all right? So before I introduce the moderator, I just want to, again, reflect back that this Good For You series started maybe 2 years ago. and MetroPlus couldn't do it on its own. So when we teamed up with iHeart, they have a particular person there who I'm about to introduce, who's an extremely creative young woman. She really knows how to dig deep and find ways to connect with audiences. And besides the fashion show that I told you we put on, we did a iHeart Health and Wellness expo in the Sheraton Hotel in Midtown, where we introduced not only a panel of great, speakers on various medical topics, health insurance topics. Dr. Oz was our feature speaker, and he spoke to the audience. But we also incorporated this year some workout sessions and exercise because it was very important to make sure that we got physically fit. We did a series of podcasts. So when we talk about ways that you can learn more about the things that MetroPlus is doing, go onto iHeart's platform and look at the various podcasts that we've done together between MetroPlus and the iHeart radio station, and you'll see all the things that we did together. We did a lot of public workout sessions. We did a barbershop series where we went out on the street and talked to individuals about their understanding of living healthy and having a healthy lifestyle. So all of that was through the creative minds of a lot of people, but one person in particular I want to introduce. So Kenya Gibson, also known as Coach Kenya, her path to health and wellness was born from her own personal struggles of balancing a healthy lifestyle as a busy parent and entrepreneur. She's a certified wellness coach through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. As a lifestyle and wellness influencer, she has been featured on The Today Show, been recognized as one of New York's Women Who Mean Business honorees, and led wellness initiatives for PricewaterhouseCoopers, Crunch, and Athleta. And let me tell you, I've gone to many of her classes, spin classes, boot camps, and all type of her workouts. She is no joke. So I'm telling you, please look up her after this to make sure that you join some of her wellness classes. She's motivated by exercise, science, research, and a means to find an effective way to train the mind and body. She created her own personal workout session called EASE, E-A-S-E, and that stands for Energizing Active Strength Exercise. Kenya has worked with many health and wellness brands such as Muscle Milk, Fitwater, and is a brand ambassador for the GAP's athletic line at Athleta. So let's welcome to the stage Coach K.
Well, thank you very much for that lovely introduction.
Absolutely.
How you guys doing? You look great. Are you ready to meet our panel? Say yes. All right, all right. So first coming to the stage, we have Dr. Torian Esterling. He is the Assistant Commissioner, Center for Health Equity's Brooklyn Neighborhood Health Action Centers, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Welcome him to the stage. And up next, we have Dr. Georgia Gavaris. Dr. Georgia Gavaris is a child adolescent psychiatry, did I say that right? Specialist in Brooklyn and has been practicing for 11 years. She received her medical degree from the University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine and has been the director of Psychiatric Emergency Room at Kings County Hospital. And then up next, we have Dr. Tawanna Gilford. Dr. Tawanna Gilford is a New York State licensed psychologist. Dr. Gilford's professional mission is to form community partnerships so that healthcare is comprehensive, multidisciplinary, and interdisciplinary. Dr. Gilford's professional interest areas of specialization are counseling, clinical and community psychology, cultural coping, social justice advocacy, forensic psychology, health and wellness exploring, intergenerational transformation of trauma, women's health, and promoting help-seeking behaviors amongst underrepresented groups. Welcome to the stage. And then we have Miss Takeisha White. She is a licensed medical social worker, acting assistant to the Commissioner of Systems Partnerships, Center for Health Equity, NYC, Department of Health and Hygiene. Welcome. And then last but not least, we have Charlamagne Tha God, who is the co-host of the nationally syndicated hip-hop iHeart radio program, The Breakfast Club. He's an executive producer with his own production company, See the God World, and the host of the popular podcast, Brilliant Idiots. And he is now a New York Times bestseller for the second time, I found out yesterday.
I'm doing all right in life.
Everybody welcome Charlamagne Tha God to the stage.
What's happening?
All right. So Charlamagne, we're going to talk a little bit about your book and why you felt led to really just share with the world your struggle with anxiety and why you felt that was important.
I think the easiest thing to do in the world is be yourself. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can't sit here and act like I have some, like, real deep philosophical meaning as to why I decided to do it. I was going to therapy, and I was keeping a journal of everything that was going on in therapy, and, like, the pages in that journal became the pages in that book. And, you know, when you have a successful first book, of course, you have the book publisher pushing you to do a second book. And, like, I don't like to do things for money. I like to do things when I actually have something to say. So I just, like, threw the idea out there. I was like, well, you know, I'm going to therapy right now to get a handle on my anxiety. So why not talk about that?
Sure. So how do you think mental health impacts the urban community?
I think it impacts the urban community in a number of ways. You know, I think that black men, we deal with a lot of trauma. You know, I mean, truth to the matter is I think a lot of us were just raised wrong, period. And then, like, a lot of things that we have to deal with when you're growing up in certain environments, like, it's just not normal. Like, you know, getting shot at is not normal. Getting guns pulled on you is not normal. You know, the violence that happens a lot of times is not normal. Like, a lot of us are dealing with things from our childhood when it comes to our parents, you know, watching things that happened in the house, whether it's, you know, mom and pops fighting, you know, wondering why your pop's not there at any given moment, you know, just anything like that. And I don't think that we don't deal with that. Like, we're just taught to kind of, like, thug it out,
Sure,
tough it out, like, instead of, like, actually doing the work. And then you get to a point where you, like, in your late 30s, you know, 40 years old like me, and you just, like, confused and trying to figure out the world and wondering why all of these issues from your childhood keep popping back into your brain and how they may be affecting you now. And then, like, you know, you end up spending mad more money in therapy because you unpacking 40 years of nonsense when this is stuff that you could have been dealt with. You could have dealt with 20 years ago if you had the proper information and the proper resources. Because everybody that I know that's an adult now is coming to me, especially in my family, my father, even my mom, coming to me having these conversations about how they went to therapy at some point and, you know, issues that they dealt with depression and things like that. And I'm like, why y'all ain't telling me this 20 years ago?
Right.
You know what I mean? If y'all had told me this 20 years ago, then when I started to have my own issues and started dealing with things, I would have had, you know, the information and knowing that there was resources out there that I could have used to better my mental health.
Sure. So I want to get into some of the stigmas within the urban community that cause people to avoid seeking the services they need. And I want to start with Dr. Esterling. How do you feel about that?
So first, I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you, Charlamagne, for being courageous to tell this story. I think that opening spaces where we can talk about mental health does combat this issue around stigma, this idea of feeling disgraced around something. But to reframe the point around stigma, you know, I think it's better to, you know, sort of look at it more in a larger context and understand, particularly in Black and brown communities, why is it very hard to have conversations around mental issues. And so just imagine, and I think this is also helpful for those who are providers, but imagine being in a world where your life is not only 3/5 and they're defining it, but they also are repeatedly telling you that your life does not matter, right? And then also understanding that your history has been rewritten and you're not even valued in textbooks. And so that context, then taking that and also understanding that if I am talking about mental issues or if I'm talking about someone in my family is touched or someone may be hearing voices and then that person might be snatched from our family. They might take the apartment if we're living in the projects, or they might take our assistance, our family assistance from our family. And so this conversation of who is really there to help me? And so if I'm trying to seek services, is somebody really going to help me or are they going to lock me up? When we look at someone like Saheed Vassal and what happened in Central Brooklyn, where the community understood Saheed, but clearly someone on the outside just came into that community and shot him down in broad daylight. And that's because of this context of mental issues and this idea of what is crazy. This society sort of has criminalized it and weaponized it in a way. And then the other part of it is when you think about the medical industry, where this is historical discrimination and oppression within the medical industry, well, how am I going to walk through some hospital or someone's clinic and receive the type of care that someone else in another community is going to receive? And so it's this long history of being discriminated and oppressed upon that leads to not only just talking about stigma, but also talking about where am I going to get the services.
Well said. Dr. Graveris, is there something you'd like to add to that in terms of stigma in the community?
Yeah, I mean, working in Brooklyn and being born and raised in New York City, I certainly have seen how people have been marginalized, have been stigmatized in very interesting ways. I mean, you know, somebody that may come in with the exact same symptoms as somebody else, and two people could get two different diagnoses purely because the person that's looking at them doesn't understand all the background. They don't understand the history that comes with it. And I'd really want to thank Charlamagne for bringing up trauma, because it is so prevalent. It is the rule, not the exception. That I work in the emergency room, and the people that come through, the trauma that they've experienced, and it doesn't have to be an incident. It could just be the way that they live their lives, the generational trauma, things that are imprinted in really in our DNA, really affect people. And understanding that and understanding the backgrounds of people is so important. And I think trauma is definitely something that's really not looked at nearly enough. And I'm so glad you brought that up. It's something that I drill into the trainees that I have ad nauseum. I talk about it all the time.
Yes, so I have a question for the lovely Takeisha. How you doing, darling?
I'm fantastic.
Good. So,
How are you?
Good. So how does the concept of mental health play into the urban community?
So this is a great question. I thank you for asking. And I also just want to take a minute to think about the way the question is framed. You know, oftentimes we have this coded language that is really soaked in white supremacy. So words like urban, words like community groups, etc. You know, it's really like a euphemism for black. Like people are talking about black, and when I say black, I'm talking about the children of the black diaspora. So I'm talking about black Dominicans, I'm talking about black Puerto Ricans, I'm talking about Haitians, Nigerians, Ghanaians, I'm talking about black Americans. You know, I'm really saying like black people in general are not being considered in terms of like what the real impact of racism is, and even in the way that they describe and outline the communities. And so we hear things like the urban community, and we need to be very clear to bring forth that, okay, you're trying to talk about black people. And the other thing that we do when we're talking about black people is we bring in this group, we group them in a way that makes it seem like black people are using more, black people are coping more, black people are self-medicating more, when actually you know from data, like Michelle Alexander's data brings forth that the majority of people that are using and selling substances, that are using and selling illicit substances are actually white, whereas in the black community, 75% of folks who are actually incarcerated for drug offenses are black. Now, what does this do? What does this mean for the context of the black community? This means that families are torn apart. This means that 1.5 million black men are disappeared. What does that do to young people? What does that do to family, to the fabric, to the social and economic ability and economic mobility for that community? And I think that's something that is often understated. And so we talk about mental health, we're talking about the ability for people to live happy lives, for people to have connection with their fathers, their brothers, their nephews, and for people to thrive. And all those things need to be unpacked, and unpacked compassionately.
Right. So I'm glad you brought up the phrase coping, because Charlamagne, you talk about that in your book, about how we as a community sometimes we use things like alcohol and drugs to cope with mental illness going undiagnosed. You want to talk a little bit about that and explain?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times we don't even know what we're dealing with. Like, we don't know we're dealing with mental illness. So being that we don't know we're dealing with mental illness, we're just doing, whatever it takes to make that pain go away or to, like, escape, whatever reality is that we're facing. So that's where the alcohol and the marijuana and the pills and all that other stuff comes into play, simply because we don't even know what we're dealing with to begin with. Like, I didn't know anxiety was considered a mental health issue. It's like everybody I grew up around was paranoid. You know what I'm saying? and including my grandmother, including my father, who would sleep with weapons at night, saying things like, yo, the devil comes to visit me at night. Like, that's not normal. So it's just like, we all grew up around people who normalized this kind of behavior. We didn't know what it was. I didn't get diagnosed with anxiety until 2010, when somebody actually told me that, the symptoms I was feeling, the things that I was, describing, the panic attacks, feeling like I was having a heart attack. He was like, I think you suffer from anxiety. I didn't know that. So, a lot of times in the hood, the reason people are self-medicating is because they simply don't know what the real issue is.
Right, right. So it brings me to a question for Dr. Gilford. Do you think there is a direct connotation in how the urban community copes with issues rather than seeking treatment? Is it easier to find harm than help? And does it come down to not having the information they need to access professional help?
First, before I begin, I'd like to thank everyone for having me as part of the panel. And to answer the question, I think that it's more about people reaching for the things that are more tangible. Substance abuse is a tangible thing for people to grasp. Going to church, embracing spirituality is something that is somewhat tangible. Like you can kind of identify, you can recognize it, you can put it into practice, you can develop steps on how to deal with it, you can measure it, it's quantifiable. But when it comes down to mental health treatment, it is a very abstract concept. And there is not one way to reach mental health treatment, or there is not one way to kind of define what a mental health issue is. So the more abstract a concept is or phenomenon is, the further people are from seeking it out, from understanding it. So in terms of people reaching for the positive things or the negative things, we have to begin to make things more palatable to people and to begin to introduce certain concepts or to introduce certain practices in places where it's not generally practiced. So what I mean by that is that individuals must begin to talk more openly about seeking mental health treatment. We have to begin to feel comfortable becoming vulnerable and talking about things that was previously shunned or previously taboo. We have to begin to open up discussions about what it is like to get mental health treatment. Like Charlamagne just spoke about him receiving mental health treatment. We have to begin to speak that language. And as a mental health professional, I also have I am also tasked with the responsibility of making mental health treatment more palatable for individuals, to make it less stigmatized, to take the sting off of it, and that way people will be more receptive to receiving it.
For the record, therapy works way better for me than weed does. Especially sativa. Sativa makes my anxiety go through the roof.
Duly noted.
Can I just add to that really quickly? One of the things that when you hear mental health, a lot of folks, we ask this question in the training, Mental Health First Aid, which, by the way, is a free training offered by New York City through ThriveNYC. And in the session, I'm a mental health first aid trainer. I'm also a social worker. When we're in that conversation, we ask them, when you hear mental health, what are the words that come to mind? And most time, folks will say things like, they say crazy, they say special, they say touch, they say mental health. Like, people say things like that. Oh, I think he got issues, he got mental health. But the thing about mental health is that it's a very weighted word. It puts a lot of pressure on individuals to make you think that your mental health is really your happiness. And when the reality, you need to think about mental health as an exploration of your human experience. You need to go deep. You have loss, you have grief, you're gonna go really deep, you're gonna get really sad, and you need like a little tour guide. You need a therapist. They're gonna help you, walk you through getting to know yourself, getting comfortable with being a human being with a spectrum of emotions. And they're gonna help you describe those emotions. So you're not over here, she bipolar, he this, he that, just because we don't have the language, a shared language or a shared understanding that as human beings, what makes us different is that we can get real, real sad, we can get real, real serious, we can get exuberantly happy, and all of those things can happen in one day.
Right. Well, hello, somebody.
Also, I want to add that sometimes the media, well, most often than not, the media associates mental health treatment with the most serious of events. Like when you see mass shootings in school, that's when you see the advertisements of when you are experiencing some type of issue, seek help. So usually there is a call to action or a call to treatment after something catastrophic occurs in the news. But we have to begin to, again, see mental health treatment as part of our overall Physical health, just the same way we see a primary care provider once a year for annual exam, we have to begin to look at our mental health professionals as primary care providers for your mind, for your brain, for your behavior, for your emotional health. And once a year, we should at least check into a mental health provider just to see how is everything coming along. How are you coping? Have you had any major events that you may be continuing to deal with? Are there any issues in your life that you may be stuck at? So we have to begin to help people to understand and recognize when they should reach out for help, not necessarily when they have the breakdown or necessarily when they stop functioning, but what are those signs before you get to that point? So we have to, again, become vulnerable, become comfortable in sharing what it is we're going through and to help each other to access help.
Dr. Graveras, what advice would you give to someone who was looking to express their struggles with mental health to family and friends?
Well, I think the most important thing is to find that person or the people who can be your ally in it, the person that you trust that can help you kind of navigate this. Because it's very scary. You know, you hear, like you said, you hear about mental health issues when there's a tragedy. And we then conflate crazy, killers, mental health, that's what we think. And that's so not true. You know, you look at studies, people with mental health issues are actually much more likely to be victims rather than perpetrators of violent crimes. So, you know, it's when we see those things, we start to get scared that we're going to be judged, that if we tell someone or, you know, we announce to the world that we have a mental health problem or we think that we might have a mental health problem, we're worried about how someone will view us. So finding someone that you trust is a really important first step. Sometimes that person doesn't have to be necessarily your family member or friend. It can be your doctor, just your primary care doctor. You know, there's an initiative right now in New York to make sure that primary care clinicians have access to mental health services as well, so they can be a good person to help you navigate how to find a provider. And if you do find someone, a friend or a family member or something like that, or someone like that, you're going to get a lot of questions, especially if that person isn't familiar with someone seeking treatment. So be ready for a lot of questions, and you don't have to answer all of them. You may not know the answer to all their questions. It's okay to tell them that you don't know. It's okay to tell them if they're doing something that's helpful or something that's not helpful. You know, definitely drugs and alcohol, as Charlamagne mentioned, it's something that, quite frankly, is much more socially acceptable than seeing a therapist. You know, going out for a drink with your friends when you're feeling upset, people talk about that all the time, but how many people say, I'm going to go see a therapist because I've been feeling really anxious? So, you know, you're going to get some good advice, you're going to get some not so great advice. So being able to advocate for yourself and know when something is helpful or hurtful, that's really an important step as well. So, you know, I think that having that ally definitely can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I just want to add, and I think that this is something that everyone in this room can do right now, is take down this number. And so in New York City, under ThriveNYC, you know, that has been mentioned, one of the initiatives that we've been focused on is making sure that folks can access someone, a listening ear, as quickly as possible. And so in New York City, if you dial this number, 1-888-NYC WELL, WLL, 1-888-NYC WELL. And here's how this is so helpful. One, you can call, and the person on the other line is just there to talk to whoever, right? It could be you if you're trying to help someone, or it could actually be the individual who is stressed or trying to find the closest behavioral health clinic or primary care clinic where you can talk to that person, as you heard. And I think it is important that you know where those access points are. But the other part, and this is where we all become supporters and making sure that we're advocating for our people, our family, and our friends, is that if we're feeling that someone is stressed out, we can pick up that phone and we can support them. We can call that number 1-888-NYC-WELL and say, I have such and such, and I've done this multiple times already. I have such and such, and I need to figure out how best to support them. What should I be doing? How can I connect them to services? Or do you think that someone can come out and then meet with that person? And that is available in all 5 boroughs in New York City.
One thing that I'd like to add is, along with that point, is individuals can text the NYC WELL, and they can also chat, because we know that some people don't necessarily like to pick up the phone, but they still want to connect with other people. We live in a world of smartphones where texting is more favorable and more palatable than chatting with someone on the phone. So there are 3 ways that individuals can access help through the NYC hotline. And again, just to underscore the point that if you know someone who may need help and they may have difficulty seeking out help themselves, you can actually take a step for an individual or for yourself to find out which facilities in your community will accept your insurance, and if you don't have insurance, will provide services on a sliding scale or free of charge. So it's a really great resource for people to tap into, especially if you live in a New York City area.
It's also anonymous, so you don't have to tell anything about yourself. You don't have to tell your business, you don't have to give your whole name, you don't have to give your address, telephone number, none of that. You can just speak and share, and you can also share on behalf of somebody else, like we said. So you can tell a story and get coached. The people who are on the other line are individuals with lived experiences. They're peers, folks who have triumphed, folks who have gone through the system, who have been hurt and come out on the other side, and they're just there to support and connect with folks. So they're relatable, they're relevant, and they understand what folks are going through on a daily basis.
Great. So I want to open this up to the entire panel, but I want to start with Charlamagne. How does fear come into play for someone who's seeking help?
Fear? Mm-hmm. How does fear come into play for someone who's seeking help? I mean, I always use fear as fuel because, fear lets me know that something is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I like this acronym for fear that my homegirl Kay Fox gave me, and it's either face everything and rise or fear everything and run. Like, those are the only 2 options when it comes to having some type of fear. So when something's scaring you, so to speak, or you're feeling anxious about something, have some anxiety about something, that something just needs to be dealt with in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. So I think, once you have the information and you know what resources are available, like, everything that they just said, then you'll take action and you'll stop just being, scared. I started to say skirt, laid up in the fetal position in your bed at home, and actually go out there and, do something about what you're dealing with.
Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I mean, I can add. So I'm at the Center for Health Equity, and I think there's like a healthy skepticism that comes within the Black community that comes from structural racism, from oppression, and from being targeted and being hurt, and walking into buildings and not ever walking out. And so those concerns, those components, they're healthy. So it's okay to have that feeling of like, can I trust this building? Can I trust these white walls? Can I trust this other strange face? Knowing that I have brothers and sisters and family members who have historically been very severely hurt, stripped from their families, et cetera, because they tried to just go get a little help. And we have current day, modern day examples of that, right? Where folks looking for help or looking for services have come and met some pretty dire ends. So, I understand this, and I think it's okay to be healthy about in acknowledging that this fear is rooted somewhere. It's just not, it's not just fear because, you don't want to really face it or because you're shameful. Sometimes the fear comes from a historical context, and when you can root yourself in that knowledge, then you'll have access to other tools, and you can really unpack that a little bit for yourself. And that's why you can actually ask for therapists that look like you. You can ask for therapists in your community. You can look for resources that are in your community. There are, lots of services across the city that reflect the faces that I'm looking at right now. And there are clinicians like myself and like those sitting up here with us that have come into this field because we care, because we've had these experiences ourselves, and because we're ready to really stand in the gap in those ways and be that tour guide for folks.
Fear also comes in when an individual has a sense that the person on the receiving end will not understand. There are many people who do not seek out services because they think that, oh, no one will get me, or my provider won't know what it is that I'm going through. They can't relate to me. So most of the time they seek out negative ways to cope through alcohol use, through substance abuse, through any type of negative behavior, or familiar ways, seeking out services through their peer support group. But the challenge with that, or one of the issues with that, is that most of the time people will give you answers based on their emotional connection to you, not necessarily from an objective standpoint. So to go outside of that zone, to again, open up and become vulnerable with someone who doesn't necessarily know you, it prevents people from seeking out help. Also, fear comes in and not knowing, will this work? It's not like if you have a cold and the box say if you take 2 Robitussin or 2 Advil, then the pain should go away. And if it doesn't go away, take 2 more after 6 hours. Mental health treatment is not that way. There is no amount that we can tell you that it will take for you to get better. Sometimes it does hurt before it begins to feel better. Sometimes you will feel like you want to give up when you start to unpack and some of those ugly things start to resurface, right? But we tell people, keep coming back because you are bringing it up and you are processing it and you are working through it. And sometimes fear comes in because your first reaction, what's familiar for you, is to run and find better ways to medicate. But that's not necessarily the right way because you're just continuing to push it down and not address it.
So I work in probably the scariest part of mental health, which is a psychiatric emergency room, which evokes all sorts of images if you've never been in one. Two things that I do when people come to the emergency room is, one is try to help them figure out how not to come back to the emergency room. So we find out what brought them there, and then we figure out a way so they don't have to come back to an emergency room, that they can avoid that situation. The second thing, especially for those who sometimes come to the emergency room because they just don't know where else to go, we have a lot of people that come in saying, I need to talk to somebody and I want to start seeing a therapist. Is to help them navigate, to help them kind of demystify it. Because if you've never been to therapy, you wonder what goes on. People have images of like somebody lying on a couch, which doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I have a couch, but you can lie on it. I don't care. But take your shoes off. But I think it's really important to help people kind of get comfortable with what talking to a psychiatrist is like, or a therapist, a social worker. I mean, depends on what letters are after your name. But I think that's really a big part of what I do in an emergency room, is try to get people comfortable with that.
And I just want to add really quickly, just to go back to a point that Takeisha had made. I think that, for FAIR, it's reshifting this idea of what mental health means, and really ensuring that when we're thinking about your health, you're thinking about the wholeness of the individual and that human being. It's not just your physical health, but it's also your mental, your social, and your emotional health. And that all ends up impacting you as an individual and ultimately the family and community that you exist in. And so that fear could be rooted in, the perceived ideas that you have about mental health, and making sure you're shifting that idea and more so thinking about, how am I supporting myself? And so when you think about, what mental health services are, we're not just talking about, are you seeing one of us, but just thinking about all the things that you do that you pour into yourself. Are you really supporting yourself? Are you exercising, yoga, Zumba? Are you going to Hill House in Central Brooklyn and connecting with other people around, mental health conversations? Are you going to other spaces where you're talking about plant medicine and also crystals? I mean, there are other ways that folks tap into healing modalities, and we got to claim that back. That's ours, right? It is not just making sure that you see somebody with a stethoscope, but making sure that you are always thinking about your health and centering that in the conversation about who you are.
Well, Dr. Esterling, I have the loaded question for you. So are we as a community doing a good job making sure that urban communities have access to getting help and resources that they need?
The fact that iHeart Radio, Charlamagne, I think, the fact that we're having this conversation, I think that we can pat ourselves on the back. I think there are folks like, in the media, celebrities. So we're heading in the right direction, right? I don't want to walk into this with a negative view. I think that we need to understand that where we are, but we need to blow this conversation up and really add the context. As you heard from Takeisha, we need to make sure that this is rooted in the historical oppression of racism and white supremacy, so that we can really unpack and unearth all the issues that it comes with, like who we are as Black people. Now, in the community, are we doing those things? We can certainly do more. Right, and that's why we have to root this in government and institutions and not put this on you as individuals. We need to shift governments and institutions to make more investments in the communities that have been disinvested. and particularly like redlining and other policies that have broken up families and fragmented us and taken us out of our community. And so that's why the First Lady of New York City, Charlamagne McCray, myself, Takeisha, Dr. Aletha Maybank, who's been chairing this work, has been making sure that we are working to cultivate culturally relevant conversations and approaches and strategies in communities of color all across New York City. We've been doing things like, yes, signing people up to mental health first aid, but we have also been hosting listening conversations very similar to this, but really trying to get deeply into what are the barriers and what are the solutions that work for you, right? Not coming in and telling folks what to do, but co-creating and coming up with strategies that we can then go into barbershops and also thinking about beauty salons and laundromats so we can have this conversation. If we're not ready to lean into the conversation, then trust me, just telling you and sending you to a doctor is not going to get to larger impact. And that's what we all have to do. We have to take this on. We need to walk into the churches and shift that language that we know is happening in houses of worship. We need to go into mosques and shift that language that's happening there, because we know that this is all about a cultural shift, and we have to infuse the right culture, who we are, what we represent, and bringing Blackness to that conversation, bringing Latina heritage into that conversation so we can really come up with the solutions that work for us.
Great. So now I want to just pivot to our Ask the Expert in the audience. I have Roger Milliner from MetroPlus Health Plan and Victor Bell. And I'm going to start with Victor. So Victor, how does cost impact people's ability to seek mental health services and support?
Well, thank you, Kenya. And first and foremost, what it comes down to is being educated, right? So a lot of the information that you heard today was about you having an opportunity to seek education and know what your opportunities are. At MetroPlus Health Plan, we have a lot of affordable products. So you saw a lot of the information early on about how much it could possibly cost if you were to get sick or get injured. The ambulance ride could cost you anywhere between $500 just to go up the street, right? If you're having a child and you don't have insurance, that bill could be anywhere between $30,000 to $40,000. You saw what it costs for an ACL injury to where that might cost you $68,000. So you want to make sure that you have coverage, and you want to make sure that it's affordable. And with MetroPlus Health Plan, we have products that are as low as $0, which will cost you nothing, to products that might cost you $20 a month. And that's less than $1 a day. And you have to be eligible for those. So if we put it into perspective, if you're a single adult, you make around $25,000, you would probably fall into that bucket to where you'll get something for $20 a day. $20 a month. But then if you're in a situation to where you aren't currently working, we want to make sure that you get out there and you get enrolled to where your insurance might actually be free for you as well. We do have additional products if you don't qualify for those that can get up into maybe the $500, $600, $700, or $800 a month. And I know that sticker value might scare a lot of people, but MetroPlus is one of the lowest, if not the lowest, plans in that actual arena. And there are different things that can help you with that. You could get tax credits, right? And tax credits will help reduce what that premium is. So let's say that you get screened and you come out having to pay $500 a month. You would get tax credits that might reduce that, and you end up paying under $100 a month, which might be less than your actual cell phone bill. So it's all about the education and making sure that you get screened. And if it's in a situation to where you're not eligible for any of those products, we have our health and hospital representatives here as well, who is our parent company, and we have Metropolitan Hospital as well as Kings County that is in the house. And when you go to their facilities, you can speak to financial coordinators, and they have the ability to screen you and get you access to health care and get you on scaling to where we can make it affordable for you. So the biggest thing is the education around it, knowing, as a lot of the panelists said today, that you do have resources around you. When you came here today, there are 10 marketing representatives from MetroPlus that are inside the room. They are the individuals that were giving you the orange wristbands, and all they want to do is screen you to make sure you have access to that affordable care. So if you guys look around, if the team could kind of wave their hands in the audience and so forth, they're the individuals that actually can help you when you're leaving, and make sure you speak to them, because education is where you really start. So when they say that health insurance isn't affordable, you have MetroPlus as your plan of choice. You have the ability to go and speak to them to see what you can actually get screened for. And we want to make sure everyone gets good access to quality care and remain good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Roger.
Can we hold it to the end, please? That's one of our aggressive representatives back
good.
there. Please come see him. He's dying to get to know you guys.
Like passionate people.
I know my sales team very well. He will talk for the rest of the meeting, so it's good. But thank you. No, definitely see the people afterwards. Okay. All right.
So Roger is going to tell us a little bit about HARP, offered by MetroPlus Health Plan.
Right. So in addition to all the great programs and price points that Victor mentioned, we do have a program specifically that deals with mental health, and it's specifically for patients with behavioral health needs. So the HEART program, which stands for Health and Recovery, is a program that is offered to any of our Medicaid recipients that are in our plan, and it provides an enhanced set of benefit services that are considered home and continuity-based services. The HCBS provides opportunities for Medicaid recipients with behavioral health conditions to receive specialized support services in their community. In addition, the HEART provides enhanced management for members to help coordinate all of their physical, behavioral, and mental and Medicaid support services. So some of the benefits and some of the specific services that it covers rehabilitation, case management, crisis intervention, non-medical transportation, peer support services, individual empowerment support services, educational support services, and many others. So in order to be eligible, the person does have to be a Medicaid recipient. They have to be at least 21 years or older with significant behavioral health conditions such as mental illness or substance abuse disorders. Eligible members will be identified by the state of New York on an ongoing basis and given an opportunity to enroll in that program. So that is a definite good program that can, help people with mental health disorders.
Great, thank you very much. So I have one more question, and then we're going to conclude the panel. So Charlamagne, denial plays a really big part sometimes when people are looking to cope with mental illness. What are some of the ways that people can break these barriers in order to get to a healthier state?
I think we just got to do what we're doing right now, which is being honest and, having the conversation. Because like I said earlier, if I would have known things that my parents were going through early on in my life, then when I started to have those same difficulties, I would have known that there was resources and information available in order for me to get help. Like, I just found out over Thanksgiving of last year that my father had been dealing with mental health issues his whole life. And mind you, this is the same person who I would visit in rehab when he was battling drugs and alcohol, and I would hear him say things like, oh, the devil's trying to get him at night, but I never looked at him in that way. But then, he told me he tried to kill himself 30 years ago, and he had been on 10 to 12 different medications throughout his life, and he was going to therapy 2 and 3 times a week. And, even when all of that was happening, and I'm having a conversation with my mom and pops, like, yo, did you know Dad was going through all this? My mom was like, I just thought he was trying to get a check, which he did, he does get a check every month, you know what I'm saying? But he really was dealing with something at the same time. So, instead of just dismissing whatever he was going through and saying, like, oh, he was just trying to get a check, she could have maybe took his issues a little bit more serious, and he could have told me this information way back when. So I just think that we got to be the adults that, we needed when we were kids, and we just got to have the conversation about mental health. That's the way to normalize it, and that's the way to make other people go out there and get help.
Agreed. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? No? Anyone have any closing remarks, anything they'd like to say?
I know I talk a lot, y'all. Thank y'all for bearing with me. But I do really want to urge you to be compassionate with yourself. Just hearing what Charlamagne is saying, I definitely grew up in a household filled with, shame, with folks dealing with all kinds of, we had multiple fathers in my household. We were living under the poverty line in my household. We lived in a really scary neighborhood, in my house when I was growing up. But, I have had a lot of compassion with myself. I've embraced myself. I've embraced my experiences. I've embraced loss. I've embraced how goofy I can be. I raced for my education, all that type of stuff. We just need to be patient, be loving, be kind, and pace ourselves around, the propaganda that we hear about our communities, the propaganda about our neighborhoods, these concepts, these overbearing concepts around how black people this, black people that, minorities this, minorities that. We really need to take, when you hear that stuff, just know that that is propaganda, that's messaging that's designed to hurt people, and you are hurt enough. Life is already painful enough. Take the time, explore yourself, love yourself, and don't be afraid to do it with somebody else. Engage somebody else, because the reason why we're all here at the end of the day is because love. It really holds us together, and it's okay to get deep inside of that and see the sad part of it, the dark part of it, the exciting part of it, the enduring part of it, and the part that we are afraid to really get into.
Right. Well, I want to thank everyone on our panel today. I want to thank you for your contribution to the cause. I want to thank Charlamagne Tha God and for you using your platform and your book just to empower people and just by living your truth. I think that's liberating a lot of people.
Thank you, Kenya. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Appreciate you.
Hold on, but before we close, again, I'm Roger Milliner. I'm with MetroPlus Health Plan, and a lot went into putting this together today. So in addition to thanking all of our wonderful panelists, and thank you for all of your time for being here, and Charlamagne as well, a lot of people went into putting this together that I have to give recognition to. First and foremost, my sister, Kenya, me and her, a long time ago, we sat down and brainstormed out what we wanted to do, and thank you for working together with us. And iHeart and MetroPlus, the partnership together is insane. We're going to keep on doing things like this. Crystal, I'm not sure if Crystal from the New York City Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. Crystal, thank you. And then I just have to go through some important people. Where is Victor Bell? Victor Bell, my right-hand man there at MetroPlus Health Plan. Kenya, I mentioned him. Our media agency. I definitely have to thank Keith and Paul for all of the media promotion that went on in putting this all together. Brandy Williams. Where's Brandy? Is she here? Probably running around. All of the logistics and stuff that you've seen here today was put together by Brandy. Her boss, Nina Lemons. Thank you, Nina. I want to thank all the regional coordinators from MetroPlus that are here who helped put a lot of the setup and activation together, all the regional coordinators in the back. I want to thank Stephen Delisant. I have to thank Stephen. That's Kenya's boss. Is Stephen here? Stephen from iHeart. Thank you for letting us use this venue. How do you like this venue and this space? It was a great space to do this at, right?
It's all right.
Well, wait, the next event, we're going to take it up to the more fancier, modernized event space that they have up on 55th Street. That'll be the next one that you have to attend. I want to thank Jamie, Maintenance. I want to thank all of the people from Thrive. I want to thank all of our hospital partners. So we have Claudia from Metropolitan Hospital in the back there. Thank you. We have Harlem Hospital represented. We have Kings County Hospital represented. I want to make sure we do that. Our photographer, Richard, thank you for all the work that you do. And to everybody from iHeart, all of our CBO partners, all of our community engagement unit, and everyone else. And last but not least, I want to thank you, our guests. Thank you for being here. I hope this information was useful for you. Please, let's give it up for the guests. Thank you for coming out in this weather, all right? Thank you, everybody. Look forward to the next MetroPlus and iHeart discussion that we're going to have coming to you soon. Thank you.
And I just want to say a special thank you to MetroPlus. Because of MetroPlus today, everyone is going to go home with a signed copy of Shook One. All right, so...
Hey, one time for MetroPlus.
All right.